Today, we're looking at Krishna's Ochre. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Krishna's Ochre is a green ink, kind of confusing. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's nib creeper to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this kind of highlighter yellow that pushes its way up, and then we see what is, in my opinion, probably a singular green color that goes from being really watered down to denser at the top of this chromatography. So it's really the yellows and the greens making this. There's no browns here. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the only difference I'm seeing between these two chromatographies is the yellow crept up slower. But other than that, there's really no difference between the two of them, which does make me feel like there's not going to be a lot of resistance. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, especially that large H, the capital H, there's so much blooming all over that I would worry that I'd lose something important in my note-taking, and that amount of blooming would be enough for me to avoid this particular ink when it comes to note-taking if I highlight. Water, surprisingly, I was really expecting water to completely remove this from the page and perhaps leave only a little bit of yellow, but it didn't. It removed all the darker greens, it left the lighter greens, it left the yellows. A lot of ink was left behind, and I was very surprised by that. Now, pen flush, doing everything that water did and a little bit more at the bottom of where the pen flush was, with only 30 seconds. It is a very, very light green. Really seeing the wish of the white of the paper coming through. It's not quite there, but it does make me feel that pen flush is all that I'm going to need to get this out of my pen. Now, to contradict that, we look at the bleach. Bleach did not completely remove this from the page. There's this like gray left behind. So the 1/3 bleach solution did not completely remove it, which is surprising, but it makes me wonder if pen flush is enough. So if I had to use a 1/3 bleach solution, I would use it quickly, and then I would clean my pen out immediately after so I don't rust the metal parts. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Krishna's Ochre has a viscosity of 2.34, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Krishna's Ochre has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. But the interesting thing that happened again is this ink on both bell curves comes up in about the same area. It's just interesting, and one day I might gather up all my inks that do that and see if there's a correlation over some of their behaviors. That experiment's a long ways away though. Now let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in bottle form back when I ordered a whole bunch of their inks. Now, to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It has some really interesting shading that goes on here. Like the beginning loop of the K and the top of the H are very light, very green. The dark is a very dark green, although it says ochre, which is a reason that I'm not a huge fan. But as a green, it's fantastic. The extra fine is the same tone, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, beautiful shading.
The bottom of the F gets nice and light. The bottom loop in the lazy is very light. J is very light in jumps. The top of the Q in quick is very light. When it shades, it's gorgeous. 8 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and amazing shading. Look at what's going on in the. We're right through the middle of the word. It's lighter. There's like a line down the jumps that's lighter. The G in dog, much lighter. Where it shades amazingly. 13 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium, we see a ton of color variation. Where we see that very light spots occur. It's not showing as well on camera, but when we see the shading, it's beautiful. The smear test, you could definitely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Tomoe River. We get no bleeding. We get a ton of ghosting. It's a dark ink. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the exact same tone as the 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 16 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone as the extra fine and the 1.1. No feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 25 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby show us no color variation. We didn't get any. And the smear test, you could probably recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, very little shade. Only a couple lighter spots show, like the loop in the ochre shows as a little bit lighter. So it has the ability to shade, and we've seen that. The extra fine is the same tone that we got with the 1.1, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and shading, it's the same thing. We get a couple spots that are a little bit lighter, kind of interesting to look at, like part in the T, and the T to the H is a little bit lighter. The beginning of the B and the top loop of the B in brown is a little bit lighter. Other than that, it's a very dark brown with 11 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone with no feather, spread, halo sheen, same kind of thing going on in the shading. The bottom loop of the T to H and the is a bit lighter. Where's it at? The top of the Q is a bit lighter than the rest of quick, but not a lot of shading otherwise going on. 17 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby showed us no color variation. We saw very little color variation. And the smear test, you could definitely recover it if you smeared. And now I have to zoom in real close so we can get you to see this, because this is the coolest feature of this ink. It color changes while it dries. See if we can get it nice on camera here. Are we in focus? You get to watch it get darker. Oops. While it dries. It goes from very light to very dark while it dries, which is neat. It's neat to watch it change colors. It goes down much lighter and then becomes darker. It's very cool to watch. Does the yellow paper help bring out some of the shading? Because, you know, when you look at the swab, you would swear it's going to have a ton of shading. It doesn't seem to. The yellow paper has no bleeding, no ghosting. This is yellow Rhodia. What happens to the tone of the ink? So the interesting thing is it actually lightens up a bunch of it, where sometimes it eats up those lighter tones, and it didn't. It brought them forward, which makes it quite nice. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen. The shading is better. There's more shade difference in the K of Krishna than we saw before. The C to H shows some color variation that we didn't see before. It is not showing on camera very well right there. It looks very dark there. It gets light into dark. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen. It does have shading, like the Y in lazy gets much lighter. The D in dog at the bottom is much lighter than the rest. The bottom of the B in brown is much lighter, but it is a very dark tone that we're getting here. 11 seconds to dry. It's that, I want to say it's oxidizing onto the paper. It's reacting with the cellulose, something like that. The same tone that we got with the 1.1. Medium is the same tone that we got with the extra fine. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen. It has spots of shading like E and the bottom of the Q and quick, both much lighter than the rest of the writing. Other than that, not a ton, but when the shading gets to come through, it gets to come through more. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We really didn't see a whole lot. In the smear test, you could definitely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. So this is Hazel Notebook. The Hazel Notebooks I ordered from Krishna when I ordered all those inks. And the paper is much toothier. Really nice notebooks for your carry-around pocket notebook because it handles inks so well. Moleskin should learn. So Hazel paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. Yes, it starts coming through when I'm putting on the scrubby and we're out of focus big time here. Let's see, zoom. There we go. That's better. We have no bleeding other than the scrubby spots. We do have some ghosting, quite a bit of ghosting through here, but I don't think that would stop you from using a pocket notebook. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the exact same tone that we got with the 1.1, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is the exact same tone with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it in the smear test. You could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. And this is Canson Bristol board. It's a good artist board. It has no bleeding, no ghosting. I'd be surprised if that ever happened. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It really points out how this is a green more than an ochre. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it. We didn't get it. And the smear test, you probably could recover it. Probably. If you smeared while you were writing. That is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Krishna's ochre, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. This is really not a great green for me, so I really wanted something that brought a lot of interest to the writing. I went with Robert Oster's Orange, properly named because it is orange. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Krishna's ochre? I'm going to go ahead and get the first bit out of the way that I don't like that it's green and not a brown. That leaves me very disappointed. Now about the green. This is a very interesting green ink. It does some very nice shading. It performs basically well. And the color change that goes on with this ink in the writing is truly cool to watch. I wouldn't avoid this ink because it's misnamed. Just know that you're not getting a brown ink, a green ink. Thanks for watching.